How much is this? I don't think this would fit you. Well, I didn't ask if it would fit, I asked how much it was. How much is this, Marie? It's very expensive. It's very expensive. Remember when a romantic comedy could be about a sex worker, a corporate raider, and a sleazeball lawyer, and the studio still tried to sell it as a date movie? That was Pretty Woman in 1990. Julia Roberts as Vivian, the Hollywood Boulevard working girl with more personality than Edward's entire board of directors. Richard Gere as Edward, a billionaire who looks allergic to feelings. Jason Alexander as Philip Stuckey, the guy who makes you want to throw something at the TV. Edward hires Vivian for a week. Stuckey panics about his precious deal, and somehow between hostile takeovers and shopping montages, it turns into a fairy tale. It was supposed to be a darker little character piece. Instead, it turned Julia Roberts into a full-blown movie star, dragged Roy Orbison back into everyone's playlist, and turned Rodeo Drive into a live-action selfie backdrop for people yelling "big mistakes huge" at confused store clerks. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about Pretty Woman. From the original dark script and reshot ending to real Rodeo Drive snobbery, improvised moments, and how Disney quietly ran this thing through the fairy tale machine. Hit that like button and subscribe so YouTube keeps dragging nostalgia trips in front of people who still remember what a VHS tracking error looks like. Let's get into it with number 15, Rodeo Drive. The shopping humiliation on Rodeo Drive is one of the most satisfying setups in the movie because you know the payback is coming. Vivian gets sized up, written off, and basically escorted out for the crime of not looking expensive enough. Look, I got money to spend in here. I don't think we have anything for you. You are obviously in the wrong place. Please leave. That scene hits hard because the attitude wasn't exactly made up. When production tried to film on the real Rodeo Drive, actual high-end boutiques pulled a Stuckey. They didn't want to be linked to a movie about a sex worker. Permissions went nowhere, and meetings got frosty. The crew found stores that would cooperate and leaned into the contempt already there. All of that makes her big mistake huge. May I help you? Thank you. Hi. Hello. Do you remember me? No. I was in here yesterday. You wouldn't wait on me. You work on commission, right? Yes. Big mistake. Big. Huge. I have to go shopping now. You're watching the movie turn the actual snobbery it ran into on that street into a full-blown revenge fantasy with shopping bags. And then the box office hit, and suddenly those same boutiques had a change of heart. Rodeo Drive quietly became the Pretty Woman tourist experience. Money doesn't judge. The original ending bombed so hard they rebuilt it. That final scene of Edward clinging to the fire escape with roses didn't originally exist. The movie just stopped. Edward pays Vivian, they say goodbye, that's it. No limo circling back, no declaration from the sidewalk. One version had Vivian and Kit on a bus riding off with the cash toward a life that was maybe slightly less terrible than the sidewalk. Test audiences weren't having it. They'd watched these two melt each other's defenses for 2 hours, and the movie basically said, "Thanks for coming, drive safe." So the studio hit the panic button. Cast got called back, fire escape built, new ending stitched on. Gary Marshall admitted they weren't making a gritty drama anymore. They were making a fairy tale, and the original ending just didn't match. So what happened after he climbed up the tower and rescued her? She rescues him right back. Without that disastrous test screening, Pretty Woman goes out on a shrug. With it, you get one of the most replayed rom-com endings of the 90s. Julia Roberts wasn't the first choice for Vivian. The role did some window shopping first. Molly Ringwald passed, Michelle Pfeiffer passed, Meg Ryan passed, Daryl Hannah flat-out refused, calling the script misogynistic and demeaning to women. When the script was still dark, Vivian wasn't the wisecracking chaos tornado we know. She was written as a tragedy in progress, and the casting talk leaned toward actresses who could sell that heavier version. Then the script got sanded down, jokes went in, the ending got softer. Suddenly, they didn't need a symbol of despair. They needed somebody you'd happily follow around for 2 hours while she steamrolled snooty people with a grin. Enter Julia Roberts. Once she signed on, Vivian shifted toward her natural gear. Funny, vulnerable, unpredictable. What is your name, miss? What do you want it to be? The wardrobe changed, the dialogue loosened up, and the whole film tilted around her. She wasn't always the plan. She was the version of the plan that turned Pretty Woman from an interesting little drama into, oh, this is going to live on cable forever. Richard Gere almost walked away from acting before Pretty Woman. Right before this, he was seriously wondering if he even wanted to keep acting. His career had cooled off, and the roles coming in weren't thrilling. What hooked him was Edward's emotional ice block, a character so locked down he doesn't know what he feels, slowly waking up because one person refuses to play by his rules. Gary Marshall nudged him to give Edward real interior life, not just coast on being the handsome man in a tie. Pretty Woman hit big. Edward became one of his defining roles, and suddenly Gere was back at the top of the romantic lead list. Not bad for a job he almost passed on while mentally cleaning out his dressing room. Jason Alexander's Stuckey was originally even slimier. This is actually the dialed-back version. In earlier drafts, Stuckey leaned even harder into being predatory and cruel, pushing the whole thing toward a harsher drama where you don't grab popcorn, you grab a therapist. As the movie shifted toward romance, they needed a villain, not a human content warning. So the ugliest beats got trimmed, but never erased. Alexander plays him just right. Slick and performative around clients, vicious when he thinks nobody's watching. He's exactly the sort of guy Vivian's been dodging her whole life, and the perfect person for Edward to finally punch in the face. The movie needed a villain you wouldn't feel bad cheering against. Mission accomplished. The opera scene was chosen to mirror Vivian and Edward. They didn't just grab whatever happened to be playing. The opera was picked to echo their whole situation. Vivian sits in that red dress watching a story about a woman from another world getting swept into a life she was never supposed to have. She reacts like an actual person would. No polite golf clap, just full emotional meltdown in a fancy box seat. Meanwhile, Edward isn't watching the stage, he's watching her. Once you know the opera's plot, the whole scene clicks into place. This isn't just a high-class night out, it's the movie winking at you and saying, yes, we know exactly what kind of fairy tale we're telling here. The red dress and the jewelry box almost didn't happen. The red dress is the image from Pretty Woman. It's on posters, DVD covers, Halloween costumes, you name it. Early costume talks tried softer colors that would have made Vivian read more sweet than commanding, cooler tones that might have blended her into Edward's world. Settling on that deep, saturated red turned the opera night into a coronation. She walks out and everyone has to recalibrate. Then there's the jewelry box moment. On the paper, it's a standard rich guy gives fancy jewelry scene. On set, Richard Gere decided it was a little too smooth. As Roberts leaned in to look, he snapped the box shut on her fingers. She yelped, then exploded into that completely unfiltered laugh. No rehearsal, just Julia getting ambushed. Gary Marshall watched the playback and knew they'd never top it. He kept the prank take, and that unscripted moment became one of the defining shots of the movie for the next 30 years. The I Love Lucy laugh was forced by tickling. Julia Roberts' laugh is practically its own character in this movie. In the scene where Vivian is watching TV and loses it completely, that hysterical reaction was manufactured by Gary Marshall's hands. He needed her to really let loose, not polite chuckling, but full-body, can't-breathe cackling. So he got down off-camera and tickled her feet. It worked. Julia couldn't hold it together, and that's exactly what ended up on screen. You're not watching Vivian laugh at I Love Lucy, you're watching Julia Roberts trying not to kick her director in the face. We're halfway through. Tell me in the comments how you first saw Pretty Woman. Did you rent it, tape it off TV, channel surf into it at midnight? Hit like and subscribe so we can keep dragging movie memories out of the closet. The hotel manager wasn't meant to be Vivian's fairy godfather. Barney could easily have been the guy spending the whole movie trying to throw Vivian out. Instead, he quietly becomes the one making sure she stays. On the paper, he starts as a polite gatekeeper, but Gary Marshall had a secret weapon in Hector Elizondo.
The two met on a basketball court in 1979 when Elizondo accidentally hit Gary Marshall in the face with a bad pass. Marshall's response was, "That's a bad pass, but you're a terrific actor. I have a movie for you." From that moment, Elizondo appeared in every single film Marshall directed, all 18 of them. He played Barney as calm, kind, and just a little amused by everything. Instead of another obstacle, he becomes the insider who decides Vivian deserves a shot. In a movie full of people judging her at a glance, Barney's the rare one who actually looks again.
Roy Orbison's Oh Pretty Woman got a second life. The movie handed the song a comeback to her it never asked for. Orbison's original lyrics are about a guy watching a woman walk by and hoping she'll turn around. It's catcalling set to a killer guitar riff. The movie flips it into a liberation anthem, a song about wanting suddenly becoming a song about becoming. That riff kicks in and you instantly know what universe you've stepped into. Radio dusted it off, compilation albums dragged it back, and a whole generation suddenly knew every note. Now you can't separate the two. You hear that opening guitar and you're seeing Vivian in those boots owning a version of Hollywood that the song's narrator could only watch from the sidewalk. The poster is a lie. That famous image of Julia Roberts draped against Richard Gere, almost none of it is real. Julia's head, sure, but from the neck down, that's her body double, Shelley Michelle. And Gere's hair is naturally gray in the movie, but jet black on the poster. The two people selling you the film on that poster are technically not the two people in the movie. One's a head transplant, the other got a digital trip to the salon. The visual equivalent of a catfish profile, and somehow it still worked. Laura San Giacomo stole scenes as Kit with minimal screen time. Kit is in this movie for about the length of one infomercial, and yet everyone remembers her. San Giacomo plays her like a real person who's made terrible choices, but still shows up for a friend when it counts. She's funny, sharp, and has zero illusions about the life they're living. Every time Kit appears, she grounds the movie. She's the reminder that Vivian's fairy tale has an expiration date. Vivian got the fairy tale. Kit got the scenes people quote at parties. Pretty Woman turned Julia Roberts into a genuine movie star. Before this, she was just that really good actress from a couple of movies. After this, she was the reason you bought the ticket. Vivian gave her a role that used everything she does well all at once. Ridiculous, heartbreaking, furious at saleswomen, and vulnerable in elevators. Audiences didn't just like her, they fell for her hard. Studios started building entire projects around what if Julia Roberts but in this situation. Romantic comedies spent the 90s trying to bottle that same lightning in different outfits. The movie's success reunited Roberts and Gere, even if critics weren't sold. Almost everyone agreed, even critics who weren't into the film, that Roberts and Gere had undeniable chemistry. Audiences showed up in theaters, wore out rental copies, and rewatched it every time it aired on cable. Hollywood looked at the box office and said, so more of that? Which is how Runaway Bride happened 9 years later. When producers approached Gere, he had one condition: if you can get Julia, I'm in. They got Julia. Audiences sprinted to theaters. Runaway Bride actually outgrossed Pretty Woman at the box office. That reunion existed because Pretty Woman proved putting these two in the same frame was money in the bank. It started as a dark drama called 3000 before Disney turned it into a fairy tale. The original script wasn't called Pretty Woman, it was called 3000, the amount Edward pays Vivian for the week. Written by J.F. Lawton, it was a harsh drama about prostitution in Los Angeles. Vivian was a drug addict with a temper. Edward was cold, detached, and borderline cruel. There was no romance. In the original ending, Edward shoves Vivian out of the car, throws money on top of her, and drives away. Just a woman on the pavement watching taillights disappear. Jeffrey Katzenberg once said that in one draft, Vivian dies of an overdose. Let that sink in while you picture the shopping montage. Then Disney's Touchstone Pictures picked up the project and insisted on a modern-day fairy tale. 6 rewrites later, the drugs disappeared, the cruelty got softened, jokes went in, and Edward became redeemable. Julia Roberts later described the original script as a really dark and depressing, horrible, terrible story about two horrible people. When she heard it went to Disney, her first thought was, are they going to animate it? Instead, Gary Marshall came on board and built the version we know, complete with Roy Orbison, Rodeo Drive revenge, and a billionaire climbing rusty metal to prove he's changed. 3000 might have been more realistic, but Pretty Woman became a fairy tale, and fairy tales are the ones that stick. And there you have it, 15 weird facts about Pretty Woman, the movie that proved fairy tales could still work in 1990. Which fact surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still gets chills when Roy Orbison starts playing.